Who is she?
The words cut through the air, sharp as shards of glass. Maria stood in the doorway, her eyes blazing, a single photograph clutched in her trembling hand. John, caught off guard, stammered, his face draining of all color. He knew this moment was coming, had dreaded it, yet here it was, unavoidable and brutal in its reality. The photo slipped from Maria's grasp, fluttering to the floor like a fallen autumn leaf. It was a picture of him, John, holding another woman, their faces alight with laughter, their bodies pressed close. The image of their shared intimacy was like a brand, searing itself onto Maria's soul.
I asked you a question.
Maria's voice was low and dangerous, barely a whisper, yet it reverberated through the silence of the room. John struggled to find his voice, his throat constricted with guilt and fear. How could he explain the unexplainable, justify the unjustifiable? He had betrayed the woman he loved, the woman he had vowed to cherish, and now he was facing the consequences of his actions. Maria's world had imploded. The man she loved, the man she had built a life with, had shattered their world with his infidelity. The pain was physical, a crushing weight in her chest, stealing her breath and leaving her gasping for air. Memories, once cherished and bright, now mocked her, each shared smile, each tender touch, now tainted with betrayal. How could he do this to her, to them? The life they had built together, the dreams they had dared to dream, now lay in ruins at her feet. She thought back to their wedding day, the joy in his eyes as he slipped the ring on her finger, the promises they whispered to each other, vows of love, fidelity, and forever. Were those promises nothing but empty words, spoken to appease and deceive? The thought was unbearable, yet the evidence, cold and hard, stared back at her from the photograph lying on the floor. The betrayal was not just about him and his actions. It was about the erosion of trust, the shattering of their shared reality. John's voice was barely audible, thick with shame and regret. He tried to explain the emptiness he had been feeling, the sense of being lost and unseen that had driven him into the arms of another. His words tumbled out, a jumbled mess of excuses and justifications, each one digging him deeper into the pit of his own making. He knew he wasn't blameless, that his actions had consequences, but he desperately wanted Maria to understand the turmoil he had been battling within himself. Yet, even as he spoke, he realized the futility of his words. There were no excuses for betraying the trust of the one person who had loved him unconditionally. His infidelity was a selfish act, a betrayal of everything they held sacred. He had hurt Maria deeply, and the knowledge of that pain was his own personal hell. The air in the room was heavy with unspoken emotions. The silence stretched between them, a chasm filled with hurt, anger, and the remnants of shattered love. Maria stared at John, her heart a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Could she forgive him? Could they move past this, rebuild the trust that he had so carelessly destroyed? John watched Maria, his heart breaking at the pain etched on her face. He knew he didn't deserve her forgiveness, but he prayed for the strength to earn it back, to somehow mend the pieces of their broken world. They stood at a crossroads, the path ahead uncertain and fraught with emotional landmines. The future of their marriage hung in the balance, a fragile thread threatened by the weight of his betrayal.